Alright, we are at the major turning point of this weapon review. Now either the real fun's just beginning for you, or it already ended with the melee weapons because those are history. We are finally reviewing the firearms. This is where it gets fun for me. So the first category of firearms I'm going to start with is the one I always start with. The handguns. Now the first one is just the plain handgun, found in both games. The RPD's official handgun. It uses 9mm parabellum rounds. Haven't heard that in a while. So back to what I said at the very beginning of this review. I mentioned that the handgun is one of the only weapons to where each character has a unique aim for the weapon. So this weapon I'm going to test out with all characters just so you can see every character's different aiming posture. Now something to mention, Kevin and Alyssa specifically have a special action involving a majority of the handguns. It's called a take pot shot. If you aim long enough, they'll do a special animation as if they're more precisely aiming, and after the animation is complete, you'll have 100% critical headshot. So it's a really awesome feature for those two characters, and it could save you a lot of ammo. Especially with Kevin's 45 auto, which I'll be getting to later. One thing I can't believe I haven't mentioned until now, that in Outbreak 1, you aim and that's all there is to it. But in Outbreak 2, they introduced a new feature that allows you to move while aiming. Like so. So this is technically the first game ever to introduce moving while aiming. And then it wasn't reintroduced until way later in Resident Evil The Mercenaries 3D and Revelations for the 3DS. So yeah. Alright, let's test the handgun out. So if you noticed right there, some of the characters have the same animations as another character. And if you also didn't notice, I reloaded two different ways. I reloaded each bullet individually into the gun, and I used a magazine. So one of the unique things about this game is they have an ammo box, but it doesn't reload all the rounds directly into the gun like the classic Resident Evil games. If you want to reload it all at once, you have to have one of these, a handgun magazine, which you could use regular box rounds like this to load into. So if you just have the box like this, then you will have to reload each bullet individually like so. There's a shortcut to doing it, of course. It's just the L1 button on the controller. So if you want some in here, you just combine like so. I no longer have the box rounds now, but now I have a magazine, so I can do this. So yep, most of the time you'll just find those box rounds. All the handguns use those same handgun rounds, except Kevin's 45 auto, which uses a 45 auto rounds. But when it comes to magazines, there's only other magazines available in Outbreak File 2. Outbreak 1, the only type of magazine really is for the regular handgun. Alright, so let's test the standard handgun on a zombie. Just a little note before I begin the zombie test, I need to mention that range is a contributing factor when it comes to firearms. So this test I'm about to perform will not apply to all ranges, but it goes like so. If you're really close to the enemy, you're going to deal more damage than if you were very far from the enemy. So yeah, think of it like that. I'm going to try my best to do a medium type range. I may do close range if they come up upon me, because they're usually walking towards me as I'm testing the weapon. So it's going to vary between the ranges. Use the damage chart if you really need to know the statistics. Alright, so to test it on a zombie, here we go. Or two zombies. Shit. Alright, well, that was good enough. As you saw, so the first zombie took 7 shots, about from a medium range. However, the second test, I did it from a very far range just to show you the truth behind the range differences. That zombie did not die in 7 shots. He got right back up. I don't know how many shots it would have taken because I ran out of ammo. Now, the handgun's damage rate does not differ between Outbreak 1 and 2. Between all the range of the game, it's probably going to take you between 3 and probably 12 maximum to take down a zombie through all modes and ranges. 3 to 12 shots. Alright, so that concludes the handgun. So there's one thing I want to do before I go to the next handgun. I'm going to test this regular handgun with Kevin's Take Pot shot just to see how much less shots it takes to defeat a standard zombie with those critical shots. Alright, so it only took 4 critical shots to take down a zombie. So yeah, it almost divided the amount of hits by half, so you definitely save a lot of ammo if you take advantage of Kevin and Alyssa's Take Pot shots. Alright, that concludes the regular handgun. Alright, so the next handgun is really just going to be a quick mention. Handgun for Mark. Mark's favorite handgun. It uses 9mm parabellum rounds. So this is essentially the same exact handgun as the original handgun I just reviewed. The only real difference is, first of all, it's Mark's personal weapon, so you can't get rid of it. It's practically a free handgun from the start of the level, instead of having to look for one first. But it comes at a price. Apparently the damage rate is 10 points lower than the regular handgun. It's the only drawback with this handgun specifically. So I'm just gonna quickly look at it, because, like I said, it's essentially the same gun. So yeah, everything's exactly the same. It was only worth mentioning, that's it. So that is it for Mark's handgun. Now for the next handgun, the Handgun SG. An easy-to-use, reliable handgun. It uses 9mm parabellum rounds. So, I guess the only noticeable difference between this and the regular handgun is the capacity. The regular handgun had 15 bullets, while this one only has 13. So less capacity, but there must be something better about it in terms of firepower. So let's test it out. Alright, so it has a different firing sound than the regular handgun, so there's another noticeable difference. Let's test the Handgun SG on a zombie. Alright, so 6 shots from the Handgun SG to take down a standard zombie in normal mode. Now the only reason I'm testing this in Outbreak 1 instead of Outbreak File 2 is because the Handgun SG in Outbreak File 2 can only be found in the flashback scenario in hard mode. So I decided that instead of succumbing to the fact that I would have to test in hard mode, I could just come back to Outbreak 1 and do it that way. Because according to the damage chart, the damage for the Handgun SG is the same between both games, so there's no problem with going back to Outbreak 1. So yeah, the Handgun SG, only 6 shots, so it's a pretty powerful handgun. The damage rate is 160 for the SG, while the regular handgun is only 150. So this is apparently stronger than the regular handgun. And I actually think it's the strongest out of all the handguns, besides Kevin's 45 Auto, of course. Alright, well, that is it for the Handgun SG. Now for the next handgun, the Handgun GL. A handgun made of super tough polymer. So by the sound of that, I guess this handgun is unbreakable. Apparently. I don't know if that really is what it means. But anyway, another noticeable capacity change. This one has 16 bullets, so it has a higher capacity than both the regular handgun and the Handgun SG. I could see where they get the name GL. It does look like a Glock. Alright, let's test the handgun GL out. Alright, so the handgun GL has yet another different sound than the previous two handguns. Alright, let's test the handgun GL on a zombie. Alright, so 8 shots from the handgun GL to take down a zombie. I don't know why I didn't think of this. If you didn't notice why there's music going on like that, in Outbreak File 2, there's extra game modes called Elimination and Showdown. I'm in one of those game modes right now. This is Elimination. Unfortunately, the handgun GL, I forgot to mention, is only in Outbreak File 2, and you can't find it in any of the regular scenarios in normal mode. You can only find it in hard mode, in the underbelly scenario. Alright, well, the handgun GL took 8 shots, so it is much weaker than the previous 2 handguns. And I think from the damage statistics, it actually is the weakest handgun in the game. Well, that is it for the handgun GL. Might as well just call it a Glock. Alright, next handgun. The handgun HP. Doesn't that sound familiar? This probably stands for high power. A handgun with high accuracy. It uses 9mm parabellum rounds. Alright, so let's test it out. Alright, so the handgun HP definitely has a unique sound from the other handguns. Let's test the handgun HP on a zombie and compare to the other handguns. Alright, so 6 shots from the handgun HP to take down a zombie from roughly medium range. That's around the same firepower as the regular handgun, so it's more powerful than the GL for sure. Well, that is it for the handgun HP. Quite a variety of handguns we got on Outbreak File 2. Oh, the HP is also exclusive in Outbreak File 2. Alright, now for the last handgun that anyone can use. The Burst Handgun. A handgun that could rapidly fire up to 3 rounds. Hence, just like its name, it is a burst fire weapon. Alright, let's test it out. One note, this is a weapon you cannot do the pot shot with. Alright, well, being a burst handgun, each individual shot is probably gonna deal very little damage. But on the other hand, you have a weapon with very high capacity, but it might eat through all your ammo very fast. Alright, let's test the burst handgun on a zombie. Alright, so 3 burst fires to take down a zombie in normal mode. I'm not entirely sure exactly how many individual shots that took. It was between 7 and 9, obviously, because he was still alive after the second burst, so there was 6 shots already. I'm pretty sure it was 7 or 8. I don't think that final 9th shot hit, so it was either 7 or 8 shots. Each individual shot, it seems, has about the same firepower as the handgun GL. So I guess that means the handgun GL was the weakest handgun in the game, and this one's pretty close. The only difference is this is a burst fire, so it kind of makes up for that, although your ammo will drop down insanely fast. Alright, well, I need to mention that in Outbreak File 2, the firepower of the burst handgun is 130, but in Outbreak 1, however, it's only 110. So they increased the firepower a little bit in the second game. Alright, that is it for the burst handgun. Alright, now for the final pistol. Kevin's 45 Auto. Kevin's favorite handgun. It uses 45 ACP rounds. Alright, so what is interesting about this handgun is not only is it exclusive only to Kevin, but it uses different rounds for reload. It uses these type 45 auto rounds. And, of course, in Outbreak File 2, they made a magazine designed for the 45 auto, which is Kevin's extra item. Alright, so let's test the 45 auto out. Alright, well, nothing much to say about this handgun, except that the sound glyph seems to be the same as the Handgun GL. But the fact is the Handgun GL's sound copied the 45 Auto, because the 45 Auto is in Outbreak File 1. And the Handgun GL didn't exist in that game, so that sound was made for the 45 Auto first. Alright, let's test the 45 Auto on a zombie. I know it's going to take the least amount of shots of all the handguns, because I know for a fact the 45 Auto is the strongest handgun. So only 2 shots from the 45 Auto to take down a zombie in normal mode. So yeah, this is a really powerful handgun. You could almost consider it a Magnum handgun because it's almost as powerful as a Magnum. Well, I'm going to show you what happens when you use Kevin's pot shot with the 45 Auto handgun. Alright, so yeah, use the pot shot with that 45 auto, especially at close range. It's only going to take 1 shot. So yeah, you can make through the majority of the level with just the 45 auto. Alright, well that is it for the 45 auto, as well as all pistols. Alright, there's a technique I almost forgot to point out that you can perform with most of the handguns. It's sort of the same mechanism like a pot shot. It doesn't work with every handgun. If you get grappled by an enemy, if you have a handgun equipped when it happens, your character will automatically perform a defensive maneuver and use their handgun to blow the enemy back. It's exactly the same maneuver you perform in Resident Evil Remake when you get grabbed by a zombie with the defense weapons. So your handgun can be used as a defense weapon if you get grappled by certain enemies. In this game, I've seen this action done when getting grappled by a zombie dog, and by a hunter. So there might be others out there, who knows. But for now, I'll just show you a quick example of me getting grappled by a zombie and performing this action. Alright, just wanted to point that out real quick. Alright, one thing I want to point out before we move on from the handguns is the fact that every single handgun in the Outbreak series is based off one of the handguns in the main series of Resident Evil. So this game is a nice throwback to the classic games if you ever played them. The regular handgun was based off the Beretta 92F, or the Samurai Edge if you will. The handgun SG, I'm not entirely sure what that one is based off of. The only one I could think of is the SIG Pro from Resident Evil 3. The handgun GL is definitely based off the Glock 17 from Code Veronica. The handgun HP is off the Browning High Power from Resident Evil 2, which was also Claire and Ada's handgun. And of course, the burst handgun is based off of the M93R from Code Veronica. Kevin's 45 Auto is also based on a weapon. I'm pretty sure it's based off the Colt 1911, or Billy's handgun from Resident Evil 0. So yeah, all these handguns are throwbacks to already established weapons in the Resident Evil series. We'll also see some throwbacks in the categories of weapons I haven't reviewed yet, such as the shotguns and the machine guns. You'll see weapons that you'll recognize from the classic Resident Evil games.